The following show is a Pod Avenue production. You are cordially invited to have dinner with the King. Pull up a chair and join WWE Hall of Famer Jerry the King Lawler and Glenn Moore. Enjoy.
Dinner with the King. I'm Glenn Moore, joined here with WWE Hall of Famer Jerry the King Lawler, chowing down on some barbecue here.
Chowing down. Why do you always start this thing right when you're mid bite?
Man, I want to be fully into the barbecue and into the show because we are sitting here at Jerry Lawler's Memphis Barbecue Company restaurant here in Cordova, Tennessee. Just a stone
465 North Germantown Parkway. We're right out in front of the big Target right there. I know you love to go back to the Walmart that's back there. Huge super Walmart behind us.
I'm a Target fan, Jerry. I like to go to Target.
You're Target over Walmart?
Wait a minute, hold on. Yeah, Target is much better than Walmart.
How is that?
It's more classy.
Wait a minute, we're about to have an argument right here in my restaurant.
Well, don't pull us. I'm more of a
Walmart guy. I think Walmart. Well, you may be right in the fact that Target may be a little more classy. I don't think I've ever seen a people of Target video on Facebook or anything. I have seen people of Walmart, but fortunately, I've never been caught in one of those videos. But yeah, but I don't know. You get the better bargains at Walmart.
Yeah, but you have higher quality at Target. That's why people go there, though.
Oh, higher quality.
Higher quality.
What if it's the same product?
That's true. I mean, well, I'm sure they have some of the similar things. Target is just more geared towards.
So you're just saying you'd rather be seen in Target than Walmart.
Yeah, but Walmart does have their killer deals. But
well, I'm glad. I'm just then that makes me proud that you don't have a problem being seen here at Jerry Lawler's Memphis Barbecue Company.
There is a photo.
The image that you have to maintain is so pristine.
I don't mind getting barbecue all over my face, but do not let me be seen in a Walmart.
Right, exactly.
Are
you going to try? Listen, we got something new on the menu there. Banana pudding. Banana pudding. You're going to love it.
I love banana pudding. You like the bread pudding. I know we had some dinner.
I'm a big bread pudding fan, but we don't have bread pudding on the menu. We have banana pudding.
I remember we had dinner here.
So don't plug bread pudding. We don't have.
We had dinner up in Cleveland one time, and we were at an Irish bar restaurant in Cleveland, and
McDonald's.
No, I think it was called. I forget what it's called, but it was on the corner. It was downtown, and we were. You ordered the bread pudding for dessert, and you were so upset with this bread pudding, and you were so hot.
It was dry. It was too dry. I don't like dry bread pudding.
You were really hot.
That was like cake pudding or something. I don't know. Not good.
Don't mess with the King's bread pudding. Never.
Speaking of Cleveland, man, you guys had some bad weather up there, huh?
Yeah, it was terrible. Just some bad storms reaping through the air. There's some tornadoes. More just basically down power lines and power being out and trees hanging over the road, closing some roads. But yeah, we had kind of like a Midwest storm that you guys probably see more than.
That's what I was about to say. We're kind of used to that stuff. When a cold front will come through and it's been warm. As a matter of fact, we had a cold front. We had that same storm front or that same front that caused your. By the time it reached up there in Ohio, it was tornadoes being spawned. Down here, it was a pretty good storm when it came through Memphis. But we didn't have that high of winds or anything. But yeah, a lot of thunder and a lot of lightning, really, really heavy rain.
It's pretty. I don't get scared by a storm, but because these tornadoes don't happen up in Cleveland that often, so it kind of freaky.
You know who's used to storms? And I used to tell him, man, move. Why do you stay in Oklahoma? Good old JR. That is the storm. That is the tornado capital of the country, I believe.
Yeah, I love tornadoes. I would, in another lifetime, love to be a storm chaser. I would love to be, chasing storms, chasing after tornadoes, getting up close and personal with Mother Nature. That would be something I would love to do.
Yeah, well, move to Oklahoma.
Well,
JR has a place in Norman that's for sale now.
Well, speaking of, is he moving?
No.
Okay.
A lot of people are, though, when the tornadoes come through.
Speaking of JR, you posted I think JR posted a photo with you over the weekend, and you guys were discussing taking the old school Attitude Era commentary team on the road for a ringside tour.
Yeah.
What's that?
We talked about it. Well, JR called me up the other day and said, asked me if I'd be interested. And JR was working with Barry Bloom, who's I think he's also Triple H's agent, and he's JR's agent, and out in California. And Barry, he's a hustler, man. He's out there all the time looking for stuff for JR, and he's booked him on a lot of those one-man shows where basically it's just you know what I actually do? We did one. I think the first time any of these got started, I can't remember who booked us on it, but it was me, JR, and Mean Gene Okerlund.
Oh, wow.
Somehow, yeah. And they booked us out at a casino, and it was in Oklahoma, of all places. So JR may have been sort of the catalyst for that one. But it turned out really well. I mean, you can imagine the three of us just sitting around. But basically, they sold tickets. People came in. They opened up the doors, and the three of us are just sitting there on the stage. And maybe the first hour or so of the show was just the three of us, relating old road stories and things that we thought the people would like to hear about. And then towards the end, after about an hour or so, they opened it up for a question and answer, Q&A type deal. And it was much like we're going to do on the show today. And it just, it went really well. And so JR took that concept, and he kind of went out on the road and started doing some of these. They've been received well. So he called me and asked me, he said, man, it'd just be a natural for the two of us to go out and do some of these things. And I get, we get asked all the time, how's that's the number one question people ask me, how's JR doing? And I said, well, good, I guess. I don't see him every day like I used to, but so, I think there will be some interest in putting the two of us back together and going out and you talk about some road stories. JR and I would have a million of them.
We got to get JR on the podcast. I know that constitutes you probably have to do his podcast because you haven't. But I think that would be great for not only, to talk about some stories in a condensed show format, but just, getting you guys.
Well, here's
together.
what he actually talked about doing. You're right. And he talked about coming to Memphis. So we're going to set this up. We could get him out here to the barbecue restaurant. Of course, JR loves barbecue. He's still got JR's barbecue sauce and all that. Sauce it. So we could get him out here. But he also wants to do a book signing. He's got his new book, Slobber Knockers, out and doing really well. I think it's in his third pressing already, which that is great. And he wants to come to Memphis, do a book signing at my club down on Beale Street. So
well, there you go. There'll be maybe a Ross Report Dinner with the King production for a show. We'll see how it goes. If you guys need a moderator on the road or security, I'm available, King.
You are?
I am.
The number one thing I hear about the podcast is everybody said, man, I love the podcast. I love hearing the old stories. But where'd you find this guy that you got on there with you, this Glenn Moore guy?
Well, we get a lot of questions for the show. And, today's show is going to be about, or Ask the King Anything. A lot of questions from fans that have followed you for years, King. But there are some questions that I get in my email or on Twitter saying,
I bet you do.
How did you meet the King? Why would the King do a podcast with you? So I have my own wrestling show. This is Awesome Wrestling Show. I haven't done it in a while, but things that we can't talk about because your time is valuable, my time is semi-valuable. That we can't talk for more than an hour 15 minutes. But I figured I would, tell some stories. And one of the stories, questions I get is, how did you get to meet the King? And I know, King,
how did we meet? Do you remember?
I do. Well, I might as well just say it now. I'll do a condensed version. So, I did. Well, Jerry, I'm in sports media in Cleveland, and I was doing a TV segment for Bruce Drennan. All bets are off, and I was on for the ballpark before the Indians.
Now, for the people around the country that may not know, Bruce Drennan is a very well-known sports guy in Cleveland, Ohio, and he has a show that's on Fox Sports every single day in Cleveland, a TV show called, as you say, All Bets Are Off. And it's sometimes we'll get into the story about how that name came about. But Bruce has that TV show, and like you said, you used to do some work for him. You were in all sorts of Cleveland sports media, right?
Yeah, so I was so I was doing on TV, and I was talking to Bruce, and it was just me, Bruce, and the producer of the show, and it was a live TV hit at the ballpark. And in the back of the room, the door opens, and in walks Jerry the King Lawler. Now, Jerry, you're one of my favorites, even before meeting you. But I didn't know you were going to be there. And in walks Jerry the King Lawler, because I think you were going to be on after me, like a half an hour after I was, because when you come to Cleveland, you usually jump on All Bets Are Off if they broadcast from the ballpark. So I got, my segment was over. I go to you, I shake, hey, I'm Glenn, nice to meet you. And I think me being on, on the show, maybe made you realize that I'm not just other Joe Schmo. Maybe not. I don't know.
They gave you some credibility in my eyes.
Gave you some credibility. So you had some time before you had to be on, and you wanted to go down in the locker room to talk to some of the players. I know you're friends with a lot, Travis Hafner, Chris Perez, a lot of guys that were on the team at the time. And you had no clue how to get down to the locker room, and you were by yourself. So I escorted you, and I'm walking with Jerry the King Lawler, taking him to the Indians locker room. And you did your thing, and then we were on the field, and we were just, BSing for a little bit. And we shot a video, which is on YouTube, between you and Chris Perez, because Chris and I did a, little video series on the field before almost every home game. And did a video with him, and you gave me your number because I wanted to do an interview for my my sports podcast. I talked some Cleveland sports, and that turned in. We had like a 10-episode podcast back in 2011 called the Kings Podcast, and it was just
what
we did. Yeah, it's on YouTube, a few episodes, but we talked mainly Cleveland sports. It was all Browns and Indians, some wrestling, but it was more catered to sports. Yeah, we did it back in 2011.
I do not even remember that, Glenn. I remember I remember coming to some place and we did a sort of a sit down TV interview with a big picture of the Cleveland Browns, a huge picture in the back, like behind our. Where was that at? What was that for?
That was with the Cleveland.com, the Plain Dealer, when I was working for them, and that was in their studio. And you were in town and had you come by the studio, do a video interview. And then you talked with some of the people that worked there because they were big fans. Yeah, you were sitting. I think I have a photo. You were sitting in front of, I believe, either the three photos were Kyrie Irving, who is gone, Justin Masterson, who obviously is gone from the Indians, and I believe the other one was Jim Brown, for the Browns player. So, I think it was Jim Brown. Yeah. I thought because it had to be Jim Brown because we couldn't find another Browns player worthy enough to keep on the board because the roster turnover is unbelievable. But so that's the first time we met and became friends. And then we, whenever you came to Cleveland, we went out. I would, meet up with you, or if I had traveled on the road to go to a pay-per-view meeting, linked up with you. So I mean, that's how we.
And then the podcast came about. You contacted me and you've remained friends, as I have too, but you probably a little more closer with Chris Perez, who was the Cleveland Indians pitcher. And then somehow you called me up one day and you said, hey, Chris is starting a podcast company.
Well, me and Chris and I.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Chris and I.
Okay.
Chris and I. I'm the
you and Chris started a podcast company, and I think the idea was because he had a lot of connections of different athletes and sports and stars and stuff like that, and you guys are going to get different sports celebrities to do the podcast, and I don't know, I know that's how I agreed to do it, and I think I know. Does Chris do a podcast himself?
No, no, he doesn't. Chris and I did it. We do a couple shows together, like talking sports or just BSing, but. You are our big free agent signing, so to speak.
I'm the big guy. I'm the big name.
You're the big one. And if you are out there, and we also help out people who want to start their own podcast, whether you're a celebrity or not, or an athlete or whatever. If you want help getting your podcast off the ground, we have some inquiries. Go to podavenue.com.
If you really, Glenn, you got to follow through on this. Tell them how to do it. Tell them how to reach you.
Yeah, podavenue.com. There's a contact button, and I offer myself a professional podcast production. I know we get a lot of people, commenting on how the show sounds. It sounds A quality audio. It doesn't sound like we're recording in someone's basement. like people think podcasting usually goes.
Like a lot of podcasts are recorded.
Basically. So, but yeah, if you're interested in starting a podcast.
Whatever happened, I put you in touch with my good friend Scott Schwartz, who has a ton of Hollywood connections. And
I called him.
And what happened?
I had never heard back.
There should be a Christmas story podcast featuring Scott Schwartz.
Oh, that'd be terrific.
Well, I mean, what? He never called you back?
Never called me back. You said he was going to call me one day, and he never did. I think I left a voicemail initially with him, and
well, you know what? I asked him the same question, and he told me the same answer. He said, I called Glenn, and he never called me back.
Wow. You gave me his number, and I called.
I'm going to put you guys back in touch with each other and get that podcast going.
But if you are someone that want to start a podcast, like I said, podavenue.com, you guys can click the contact button and get started on your podcast or helping out your podcast with making it sound more professional and getting out there to the masses. And speaking of the podcast here, Spotify. You know what Spotify is, King?
I do know what Spotify is because Lauren listens to music on Spotify all the time.
Well, our podcast is going to be on Spotify. I got approved to be on Spotify in the podcast section, which is very rare for not just any podcast can be on Spotify. But our podcast is going to be on Spotify. So if you have a Spotify account, either free or premium, you can listen to the podcast that way. We're not on there now. We just got approved yesterday. So they said within 2 weeks we'll be on Spotify. And if when that happens, I'll be sure to link it on our Twitter and our Facebook feed. Yeah,
be sure to do that. And for the people that are listening to this podcast every week, I mean, it's amazing. I just did I did the big event up this past weekend in New York City, and hundreds of people coming by, getting an autograph, saying hi. And I was just shocked and amazed at how many people said, King, I love your podcast. People, I mean, some guy listens in Australia, and not just some guy, but this guy was there from Australia and mentioned that he listens to it. So they're listening to this thing all over the world. So anybody that's listening there, don't feel like you're by yourself. We got a lot of listeners, don't we, Glenn?
Yeah, we have a ton of listeners. I mean, we every week, depending on the topic, or, I mean, our Jerry Lawler Sings episode is kind of low. I don't think people want to hear you sing, King. But I'm kidding. But no, when we have guests on, Jim Cornette episode, Terry Funk, Cody Rhodes are some of our top episodes.
What about Bret Hart?
Bret Hart too. Ellsworth even is up there as well. So, but everybody loves the Cornette and Terry Funk episode. So, right. They love that. So yes, we'll be on Spotify. We're almost in every single country represented, all over the world. People are listening, and just is astonishing to see the numbers grow, and also see where people are listening from, like the countries, and it's really amazing. But yeah, if you do see the King out and about, you make sure you tell him that you enjoy listening to the podcast, and if you can't, tweet at us at Dinner with King. Let us know where you're listening from. I know we did that before, and people were posting pictures from their backyard, or some guy was fishing at this beautiful
that was
lake.
Cool. I enjoyed seeing that. And that's another thing. A lot of people, I want you to know that if you send out a tweet and mention me in it, at Jerry Lawler, I see every one of those and read every one of those tweets. I'm looking at my Twitter account right this minute, and I know I have to put my fork down here, but I love that and we get that a lot. People talk about listening to the podcast. So thank you for listening out there.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, if you are listening to this and you can't interact with the King directly, if you see him out and about at a convention or a wrestling show, tweet at us, Dinner with King, at Jerry Lawler, at Glenn Moore CLE, and sending us a photo of where you are listening to Dinner with the King. Let us know.
This, I like that you put out, if you want to hear your voice on the show, call this telephone number. And we've actually had some people do that, and we're gonna actually hear from some people there and actually have them ask me questions on today's show, right?
Yeah, I almost tweeted out your phone number, King, and then I had to delete it really quick. And people can't be calling you to hear your voice, to talk to you. That would have been bad, tweeting out your phone number.
Yes, but whose phone number is this?
Well, this is a number where people can call. The number is on our social media, Facebook and Twitter. If you want your question or even a comment, or if you want to make fun of me, you can leave a voicemail, and it's you leave a voicemail. You follow you call the number. It's a service. It's a free service. You dial in the access number, and it comes up to our voicemail, and you can leave a voicemail, and I get notified via email every single time we get a new voicemail, and it comes down. I can listen to it directly from my phone or from my computer, and we can play it here on the show. We got a few questions via voicemail this morning for our Ask the King Anything show.
Yikes! Should we get into that now?
We have some. I know we're stretching this out a little bit, but let's get into some notable topics before we get into some of the questions from our fans. Tonight, just recording here on a Tuesday, so people listening to this right now have probably seen this, but Ric Flair's 30 for 30. It was on ESPN. Oh, yeah. King, you were on locally in Memphis talking about this?
Yeah, this morning, 9 o'clock, a reporter here in Memphis gave me a call. Where did I write it? Oh, yeah.
Whoa,
Ron Maxey.
King, don't
Ron
spill.
Maxey.
You spilled barbecue sauce all over
too
table.
far. But Ron Maxey, I'm sorry. Yeah, can we get somebody over here to help? We got a spill on aisle 3. Oh, no, that's Walmart.
Can we get a bib for Jerry?
Anyway, Ron Maxey from the Memphis Commercial Appeal, our local newspaper here in Memphis, is really excited about this 30 for 30. Is it called 30 for 30 or 30 by 30? What is it called?
Well, it's the ESPN 30 for 30 production.
30 for 30, okay.
Yeah.
And so anyway, yeah, it's all about Ric Flair. It's all about his career, his life, everything. I think this delves into it's everything you ever wanted to know and more about Ric Flair tonight on ESPN is when it debuts. And of course, I guess they'll play it different intervals. It's not just a one-off thing, right? Once they air it, they'll air it again and again, right?
Yeah, they'll air it, and it'll be available online shortly after. But yeah, looking forward to this because ESPN 30 for 30, they do amazing jobs. They did a whole episode about Cleveland and the misery of never winning a title, and then they aired it before the Cavs won a title. Then they went back and amended a new ending to the story with the Cavs winning a championship and the drought of I know you're not a basketball fan, King, and
I am a basketball fan. Of course I am.
Well, I mean,
I like the Cavs and I like the Memphis Grizzlies.
Well, you're a Browns-Indians fan.
Well, that's a hardcore, that, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can't name another player other than LeBron James on the Cavs, right? Yeah, that's what I thought.
Kevin Love?
Oh, is that a question or is that an answer?
That's an answer.
You are correct.
Hey, look at that.
So you got two. If you're going to say Kyrie Irving, I might have had a smack.
Kevin Love's a big wrestling fan as well.
Oh, he went as NWO Sting, Wolfpack style, for Halloween, and then his girlfriend, his hot model girlfriend, went as Hollywood Hogan.
What?
Yeah, Hollywood Hogan. He had the Fu Manchu and everything.
Wow.
Yeah, and then Hogan tweeted at him and said, "I never looked so good, brother."
brother. Did you see Lauren? Did you see my fiance Lauren on pictures of her on Facebook?
Yes, we talked about it last week. Dolly
Parton.
Parton.
A good Dolly Parton.
We know you enjoyed that, King.
Oh yeah, we did already talk about that. I'm sorry.
We know you enjoyed that. Yeah. Speaking of other documentary that I watched recently from 9 Legend Films, and it's called Roddy Piper in His Own Words. It's a documentary.
Wait. Before we get into that, and I do want to get into that because I love that, but we didn't finish the comments about Ric Flair.
Okay.
Because I just wanted to say that, 9 o'clock this morning, the reporter called me, and he asked me questions about, and he said, I watched, I said I wanted to be prepared for this interview, so I watched the YouTube video of when Ric Flair came to Memphis and we had the match, on Memphis TV that turned out to be a sort of a self-made world championship match, and it's kind of a cool little thing that we did there. But the question he asked me was, what was my relationship with Ric Flair like? And I told him that early on in our career, this was back in the territory days of wrestling when the country was divided up into, there was like 32 different territories at one time. And each one of those territories had their own wrestling area that they promoted in, and their own wrestling office and headquarters and promoter and booker and all that sort of stuff. And our territory, the one that I started in, was Memphis, and we had wrestling throughout the state of Tennessee, Arkansas, Kentucky, Alabama, and Mississippi, and that was our territory. And so I basically stayed in this area while Ric Flair, he was the NWA champion for most of that time, and Ric's job involved a whole lot more traveling, and the fact that the way the companies usually worked it with territories at that time, you would get like a week. You would get a week's worth of bookings from the NWA World Champion, who was Ric Flair, and he would come into your territory and stay for 1 week, and he would go around and work all your major cities in that week, and then boom, the next week he would move on to the next territory. And so, and like I said, there were like over 30 territories at the time. So Ric would only be in, he would come to our territory for a week, and it might be, almost a year before we got him back again. It was hard to get dates here because he was in demand all over the country and in all these different territories. So I told the guy I didn't get to like pal around with Ric or see Ric that much. It's just only in the main part of our career, only when he came to our territory. But then once we both were in the WWE, then I of course saw him on a regular basis, and that's where Ric and I became more of what you would call friends. And I told him, we always had a different lifestyle, and I think that anybody that watches this 30 for 30 on Ric will realize that Ric was he was a very flamboyant guy. He was a hard worker and a hard player. I mean, and there were stories about Ric that unfortunately were true. That Ric might go into a city, say for instance, just for instance, I don't know, maybe he had a wrestling match in Dallas, Texas or something, and might get paid $3,000 for that match that night. And then Ric would go out and have a $3,500 bar tab the same night, because Ric was the kind of guy that, and what's the amazing thing is, like, he had that reputation for he enjoyed going out and drinking and that sort of thing. And if Ric had wanted to, being the NWA World Champion, he would never have had to buy a drink in his life. I mean, because everybody would want to buy a drink for Ric Flair, the world champion, that sort of thing. But Ric just wasn't that kind of guy. When Ric walked into a bar or something, everything was on him. I mean, he was the main guy. He was the world champion, and it was like nobody's money was any good at that point. And Ric Flair took control of the room, and it was all on him. So that, but that was a different lifestyle than I led. I never went out to bars, and everybody knows I've never in my life even tasted not even one sip of beer, wine, whiskey, alcohol of any kind. So we just, we didn't travel in the same circles in that regard. But we did see each other in WWE all the time, at work. And so that's where Ric and I became friends. And then even more so, more recently, we've been doing a lot of Comic-Con appearances around the country. As a matter of fact, Ric and I were sitting right next to each other for the whole weekend at the Florida SuperCon in Fort Lauderdale, the week before Ric, fell ill recently. So that's been my kind of friendship with Ric Flair. So I'm really looking forward to this 30 for 30 about Ric Flair, because I personally will find out a lot of stuff about Ric that I didn't know. I didn't have the good fortune of being that close of a friend of Ric through all the years. So I'm looking forward to seeing this thing tonight and see what Ric Flair is all about and what has led him to the point in life that he is today.
He's going to be at Starrcade. It was announced that Ric was going to be at Starrcade. I think he's going to accompany his daughter Charlotte down to the ring when she faces Natalya in a cage match at Starrcade.
Now, when is Starrcade?
It's Thanksgiving weekend, so you're going to be within I think a few miles of that place.
I'm going to be at WrestleCade.
Yeah, and
then WWE is putting on Starrcade, which Starrcade, of course, was a big WCW event, right?
Correct. It was like the.
It was like WrestleMania
right.
for WCW.
Yeah, it was yeah. So they're going to have Starrcade
back in the day before WWE bought out
WCW.
The defunct WCW, right?
Yeah.
So they're reviving Starcade on the Thanksgiving weekend. That'll be cool.
Yeah,
Where is that at? Is it going to be in Winston-Salem?
Yes. No, Greensboro. You're gonna be in Winston-Salem, I believe, and then Greensboro is where Starcade is going to be.
Right.
So you're going to be. There's a ton of. If you're in that area, it's going to be a mecca for professional wrestling with WWE in town, but also with the WrestleCade, which you're going to be a part of. The lineup is astonishing, and we can talk about this next week to promote.
Well, that's sort of like this big event. These things are going on all around the country, and I'm astonished, to use your word there, that how many people turn out to see these guys and get pictures and autographs and that sort of thing. And this thing that I just did up near right across the street from the LaGuardia Airport this past weekend. I mean, I saw guys I haven't seen in years and years, but then also some guys like Pat Patterson was there signing and taking pictures. And I went over and I was talking to Pat, and he said, this is the first time I've ever done one of these things. He said, I didn't even know they were out here. And Pat had a huge line of people because he hadn't been out there being available to the fans like this before. But yeah, I saw tons of guys. Almost the entire old ECW cast was there. I saw Sandman and Sabu and just tons of Francine and tons of the ECW crew down there that you could go by and take a picture with all of those guys. And oh my gosh, King Kong Bundy was there. Oh, and just Shawn Michaels was there. Jimmy Hart was there. Rick Steamboat was sitting next to me, and Tori Wilson right across from me, and just tons of Booker T was there. It was great, and that's what this WrestleCade is going to be like.
Yeah, WrestleCade weekend, the 24th to the 26th, and the lineup is just absolutely amazing. You have Mick Foley, Terry Funk, Terry Funk and Foley together.
Funk. Lawler, you son of a... Oh, excuse me.
Sergeant Slaughter is going to be there. Tatanka.
Sergeant Slaughter was there this past weekend. I saw him.
Rock and Roll Express, Tommy Dreamer. Oh, your buddy New Jack is going to be there. Oh, boy.
He was there with the ECW crew at the big event.
Did he say hi to you?
No, he did not.
Oh, Jesus. That could be another episode another day, King. Let's see. Jim Neidhart is going to be there. Road Warrior Animal. Tracy Smothers is going to be there.
Tracy Smothers? You're kidding.
He still wrestles.
I know he did.
Yeah, he's great.
I wrestled him not all that long ago.
He's great. You have Rocky Johnson's going to be there. Dean Malenko. Let's see. One of my favorites, the current with TNA, Alley is going to be there. Let's see. Brutus Beefcake is going to be there. Christian.
Yeah, he was there at big event sitting across from me, too, right next to Tori Wilson.
Christian's going to be there. Jimmy Hart is going to be there. John Morrison.
Jimmy Hart comes over to me, and I swear, it's like Jimmy Hart looks the same today as he did the day I got him in the business. It's so good. And he's still got the same amount of energy, and he's just unbelievable.
Grandmaster Sexay is going to be there.
What? Yeah. He's going to be there?
He's going to be there. You guys traveling together?
I don't think so.
You flying or driving?
I like to be there on time.
Yeah. Rikishi is going to be there.
Oh, they'll be traveling together. Rikishi and Grandmaster Sexay.
Yeah. Barry Windham is going to be there.
It was funny because speaking of them, apparently Rikishi and Grandmaster Sexay were wrestling somewhere fairly recently. And who do you think took the place of Scotty 2 Hotty?
Oh, jeez. I don't know who.
They had a match, and this guy took the place of Scotty. He told me this past Saturday.
Who?
He said, you should have seen this match. He said, because they did their deal, and he said, I said, wait a minute. And then he said, I got down and started to do the worm, and then somebody, I guess the other team jumped on him and started fighting or whatever. But Bob Orton.
What?
Bob Orton Sr.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, can you imagine that team? That's too cool.
Only in wrestling.
Rikishi, Grandmaster Sexy, and Bob Orton Sr.
Oh, jeez. Let's see.
Bob Orton Jr. Bob Orton Jr. I'm sorry.
Terry Taylor is going to be there.
He was there this past weekend.
Fred Ottman's going to be there.
He was there. Saw him.
Tom Pritchard is going to be there.
Yeah. Past 1,000.
Let's see. I'm scrolling down. I haven't seen your. D'Lo Brown will be there. Demolition will be there. Let's see. Ken Shamrock, Billy Gunn, Dan the Beast Severin, Lex Luger, Magnum TA, Kid Cash, Jake the Snake, Carlito, Scott Steiner.
What the heck?
Jeez, Bobby Blaze, Dutch Mantel, your buddy
What?
Dutch. Yeah, he's going to be there.
Gonna be there.
Yeah, Arn Anderson, the Enforcer, he's going to be there. Let's see, Tommy Rich, your buddy Tommy Rich is going to be there. Jim Cornette's going to be there. Midnight Express, the Spirit Squad. Jimmy Valiant's going to be there. J.J. Dillon, Bruce Pritchard. Let's see, Willie Mack, Farouk, Ron Simmons, Teddy Long.
Oh my God. Okay, that's enough. I can't believe it.
Holly Holla, Marty Jannetty is going to be there.
Yeah, Teddy Long came by my table the other day too and said hi.
Mr. Hughes is going to be there.
Mr. Hughes, Curtis Hughes,
Marty Jannetty, the Honky Tonk Man. Honky Tonk Man.
Honky Tonk Man.
Oh, Gilbert, the Boogeyman, Al Snow, and last but not least, the man that is listed last on this list of names is Jerry the King Lawler.
What?
You're the last
You're
photo.
lying.
I swear, you're the last photo on this list.
At the last minute or something like that.
No, you've been pumped for this for a while.
Well, they saved the best for last. You've always heard that expression, right?
Yeah. Well, they have Christian on top.
Yeah.
Bobby Lashley and Robbie E.
You know, you spoke about there was a guy. Randy Hale sent me a picture the other night. This was just a couple nights ago. Randy Hale sends me a picture and of him and somebody at my bar down on Beale Street, and he says, "Do you know this guy?" And I said, "Of course I know the guy. It was the Boogeyman."
Oh boy.
Not Boogeyman Handsome Jimmy Valiant, but the Boogeyman that ate the worms from the WWE. And he was just in my bar. For some reason, I guess he was making an appearance in Memphis, and I looked back at some old pictures of he and I together, and Randy Hale said the same thing. He said, "Man, if we had had this guy in Memphis back in the 80s or 90s, how much money would we have drawn with the Boogeyman?" And I said, "You're right. It would have been incredible." I mean, that guy, that's still a great gimmick to this day. I love it. I saw the WWE used him on a tweet the other day about change your clock back, and it was a great picture of the Boogeyman. You know, he had that clock hanging around his neck.
All right, let's get into the show because we only have a little bit of time left.
Are you kidding me? We're not into the show yet?
We got to get to the question. I think next week we'll do some questions to celebrate Thanksgiving. Well, it's 2 weeks away, but in the spirit of giving in the month of November, we'll do another questionnaire show for Jerry since we.
I got to do Survivor Series before Thanksgiving.
Oh, you're going to be at Survivor Series?
Of course.
What are you going to do? Are you going to be on the
Me and
pre-show?
Shawn Michaels are doing the kickoff show,
Okay.
and then I'm going to do. I think they're having Raw Talk after Survivor Series.
Ooh, look at you. All right.
Renee Young will be doing that.
Renee Young, she's great. Okay, really, let's get into topics, then we'll answer some questions, a couple questions from the fan via the voicemail. Then next week we'll answer more fan questions. How about that, King?
Whatever you say, Glenn.
Okay,
You're the Pod Avenue star.
Get out of here. All right, a news topic.
Have you tried the banana pudding yet?
King, I don't have time for dessert right now, King. We got to get into the show. All right, let's get into the show. All right, the main topic that we to talk about before we get into the actual voicemails, TNA is paying people. Well, I'm sorry, Impact Wrestling or Global 4. I don't know what they are. I think they're called Impact Wrestling. But Jeff Jarrett is no longer with them. I think Jeff Jarrett's in rehab. I think.
I saw that. That's sad.
Yeah, that's sad. I think.
Well, it's sad, but it's good. It's good the fact that he has acknowledged that he obviously has a problem, and he's going to get it fixed. Hopefully, that's good.
Yeah, definitely. But TNA has partnered up. They're in Ottawa, Canada now. That's where they're based. And Smith Casting posted this on Facebook. They are looking for people to come fill in their crowd. They're going to pay people to watch wrestling. You get $50 a day, 4 hours of work for 3 days, all ages.
Of course,
you can be anybody. Bring friends and family. You got to work more than 1 day. It's casual clothing, t-shirts, jeans, sweatshirts, weekend casual, and you get $12.50 an hour for 4 hours of work, $50 a day, and you have to be familiar with the wrestlers. You have to go to their website if you're not familiar. Make your own signs, or they will give you signs to hold up.
Jeez.
So, King, I mean, you've been involved with promotions for many, many years. Is this something that maybe happens more than people think?
I've never, ever heard of it happening at a wrestling show, an actual wrestling event. I've never heard of that. I mean, it's been a long practice in Hollywood as far as when TV shows are made. A lot of people don't realize that almost all of the, when you watch a game show, maybe not Price is Right or something where the audience participates, but when you watch a game show or something like that, like I remember when we did the Missing Link, or Weakest Link, not Missing Link. We did the Weakest Link TV show, and they had a studio audience. Well, all of those people out there are paid members of the audience. That's just the way, that's just the way things like that work. And I remember when we did Talk Soup, that was a paid audience for those kind of shows. Not a big audience or anything. Hey, and when I said a while ago, I've never seen it done for a wrestling show, but in sort of in the fact that I remember when we were shooting the movie Man on the Moon, and we were doing the wrestling scenes with me and Jim Carrey. It was what was supposed to be the Mid-South Coliseum. Of course, it was the old L.A. Coliseum in Los Angeles, and all of those, there were like 4,000 people in the audience, and they were all paid extras. They was just like that thing you read. They put out a casting call for people, and I think they told them when you said casual dress. I think that I'll never forget one of the things that when I got there to shoot the scene for the Memphis wrestling thing where I pile drive Andy Kaufman at the Mid-South Coliseum in Memphis, all of these extras. Of course, this was, like I said, in Hollywood, California, and L.A., California. All of these extras were dressed like farmers. They all had on, I don't know, half of them had on straw hats and overalls and things like that. And I guess that's what the casting people thought everybody in Memphis, Tennessee wore. And I stopped and I told the director, I said, Milos, please. I said, look, I've been wrestling in Memphis for 20 years, and I've never seen anybody come in there in a straw hat and a bib overalls and that sort of thing, And so some guy picks up a microphone and says, everybody lose the straw hats, put them under your seats. And so that's how that went with the paid audience. But as far as an actual wrestling show, this is the first time I've ever heard of it. And I don't know if it's sad state of the wrestling world or the Impact Wrestling world, or if it's just wrestling going more and more Hollywood.
I think it's. I don't think it's wrestling.
You think it's a sad state, right?
I think it's a sad state, and you know what? I know people rip on Impact Wrestling, but I think for wrestling to become exciting again on the big level of WWE, I think there needs to be legit competition for that to happen. And
without a doubt, competition is good. I was talking. I did an appearance this past weekend too at a great, man, this store was just awesome. It's called Royal Collectibles, Royal Sports Collectibles, I think it's in Flushing, New York. But they had just some of the greatest wrestling and sports memorabilia and things like that available. But me and Al Snow did a signing there for a few hours. And is Al is involved some kind of way in Impact Wrestling, right?
I don't think he's there anymore.
But he was recently.
He was recently, yes. He was
and I talked about it a bit, and that was one of the impressions that I got, that it's just sort of in a state of disarray right now. They're going through so many changes with Jeff Jarrett, dropping out, and just the name. Whenever you can't settle on one name, I guess it was TNA, and they sort of wanted to get away from the connotations that TNA had here in the States. It was supposed to stand for total nonstop action, but everybody knows what TNA, when you say TNA, what most people think of is
what
TNA.
What can
I can't say it here.
Testin Albert?
No, that's not it. But anyway, apparently they wanted to sort of get away from that connotation, but also overseas, where I think they still do have a popular show, or their show is sort of popular still in England and overseas on some of their markets over there. They like the term TNA over there, so they've kept that name there. Here they tried to change it to Impact, And then all of a sudden, Jeff Jarrett comes along, and he talks him into changing it into Global Force Wrestling. And now Jeff is out, and they're going back to Impact. And it's just mass confusion. And I think that the company is now owned by, is it a TV company or who is it?
The Harris, I think the Anthem owns it.
Anthem, yeah. So anyway, apparently it's sad in the fact that, as you mentioned, I think that competition is good. I think it's good for the WWE. I think it keeps everybody on their toes, and it gives certainly a place for more wrestlers to find work. And I just think it's good all the way around. But these guys can't seem to get going in the right direction, which is sad.
I know, King, you're not around WWE, backstage, shows as much as it used to be, but just from what you know, if you can answer this question, and this is a question that comes up from fans, does WWE look at TNA as any sort of competition whatsoever, or is it just not even a blip on their map?
I don't think it's even a blip on the radar.
Yeah,
I don't think they give it two thoughts.
I know some guys from TNA have come over to WWE, like a Bobby Roode, a Samoa Joe, Kurt Angle. Obviously, he's a WWE guy, but he was in TNA for many years. And then you have some guys in NXT that have signed. James Storm came to WWE, and then he's back in TNA.
I just saw that Triple H showed up at an independent show over in England.
ICW in England.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's the lifeblood of WWE is finding and keeping new talent, and they have to have a place for these new talents to be developed. And NXT, of course, now with NXT being broadcast on the network all the time, it's not like even when you bring somebody up to the main roster from NXT, it's not like the people haven't seen them before. They're not new. So, there's always going to be that eye out for in different places like independent shows and Impact or whatever they're called themselves. To bring in new talent to the WWE from. And that's what I'm talking about. In that regard, it's sad to see it not do better because WWE could almost look at them, I don't think they look at them as competition and the fact that they're a threat to them, but I think they did look at them as a place to get some, you could just kind of pick their top talent whenever you wanted to, because the guys are looking for greener pastures.
Almost like and if TNA is successful, that means more wrestlers are working and getting paid and working their craft, and because you want to see as many people survive and thrive wherever promotion they are in, either they're Lucha Underground, in New Japan, wherever they are. You want to see wrestling be successful on the whole because it helps the business overall. And it is a sad state with TNA or Impact Wrestling, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it's very interesting. But I always wonder that if WWE looks at Impact Wrestling as even competition, or they just don't even care.
I think they concentrate on doing what they do best, and that's trying to make their company the best thing out there, and they do that well. And I don't think they look at them as a threat in any kind of way.
Earl Hebner is leaving TNA. He obviously good old Earl. Obviously, if you watch any kind of main events from the Attitude Era, even way before Attitude Era, Earl Hebner is probably refereeing some more of the iconic matches of WWE history. He's leaving TNA. I know there's some, I wouldn't say bad blood, but he didn't leave WWE on good terms. There's a guy that deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, I believe. Earl Hebner. Do you think so? Maybe? Yeah? No?
I've always loved Earl Hebner, both the Hebners. Those are, as you said, especially when I started in WWE in '93, those guys were a staple there. I mean, they were, yes, I guess famous is a good word. So would they deserve to be in the Hall of Fame? I would think so. I would think, if all of a sudden you say, hey, the Hebners are going to be inducted in the WWE Hall of Fame. I don't think there'd be anybody out there that would say why or when or what.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys were on TV so much and involved in so many classic, famous WWE matches. But I mean, hey, who knows? Like you said, I've heard stories of what was the reason that they were let go from up there, but who knows what the real story is, Yeah. And if there are lingering hard feelings. That's the one good thing that I've said in the past about Vince McMahon. I don't know of anybody that he has stayed mad at forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that that's going to happen in any kind of business relationship. There's going to be arguments. There's going to be falling outs, and classic example is Vince and Hulk Hogan. These two guys have been friends, enemies, back and forth. But I don't think that I can't really call anybody that Vince has just stayed mad at forever. So
not Ted Turner.
I don't think Vince is mad at Ted Turner.
No, I don't think so. I'm just.
No, I really don't.
Well, you see, Eric Bischoff, come
Is Ted
back.
Turner still alive?
Oh yeah, he's still alive. I'm not sure what he's doing, but he's still alive. He's on Twitter, I believe. I think
if I was that kind of rich, like Ted Turner is, I think that's what I would do. I would just go away somewhere and stay out of the public eye and enjoy my riches and my wealth and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, he's on Twitter. He only has 10,000 followers.
What?
On Twitter? Yeah, 10,000. I have more followers than Ted Turner. Jesus. He's an entrepreneur. Media.
Is that the real Ted Turner? Does it have a blue check mark?
Yeah, it's verified. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Vince has brought back Eric Bischoff. Jim Cornette, a guy that has blasted WWE for years. Recently came back for the Hall of Fame ceremony. So I mean, anything can happen. Kurt Angle, they didn't talk for what, 11 years. Kurt and Vince, and Kurt has come back. So I mean, anything can happen in the WWE. That's what you always tell me. Anything can happen.
Well, Vince, I mean, I've always looked at Vince McMahon as being the ultimate businessman. I don't think there's any. You can look around. And of course, I don't know that many other billionaire businessmen. But I mean, if you look around, I think he is the best person that I've ever seen at running a business. And so, all of these things these falling outs or these disagreements and everything are really all involved in business. And I don't think he lets that. I think being a good businessman, I don't think it carries over into his personal life. So I don't think he harbors these really deep bad feelings towards anybody for any length of time. I think it's always just about the business, and that's one of those deals where time eventually heals all wounds.
Definitely. So, do you think we'll see Earl back in WWE? I mean, he's getting kind of old.
Honestly, I don't think you'll see him back in the WWE. I would not doubt that you wouldn't see him in the Hall of Fame, but I don't think he'll be back working there on a regular basis.
One guy that I really want to see in the Hall of Fame?
Who?
Vader.
Oh, yeah, he'll be there someday.
He has to be. Has to be in the Hall of Fame. There's rumors that...
And Andy Kaufman.
Andy Kaufman, definitely.
The Hall of Fame.
There's rumors that Goldberg is going to be the main event inductee for the Hall of Fame this year, Goldberg. But there's a lot of names being thrown out. The Rock, The Undertaker, but these guys are still, active wrestlers, and I think they're in the same boat as you. When Vince came up to you and said, "We're inducting the Hall of Fame," and you said, "I'm not retired." I'm not.
I said, no, I don't want to do it.
I don't want to do it. Yeah. And if you had your way, King, you wouldn't be in the Hall of Fame anyway right now because you're still wrestling. You're still active. So.
Yeah. And Vince, Vince took the time to explain to me. He said, "Look, you don't look at it like baseball or football Hall of Fame where they just induct people that after their career is over." And of course, that's the only way I had looked at Hall of Fames. That was the only Hall of Fames I was familiar with. And he said, we just do it to recognize people that have contributed and recognize their contributions to the business. And you've been doing it long enough that, and we're not saying that you have to stop doing, which of course I didn't, and so when I looked at it like that, it was all well and good. But I think that the majority of wrestlers themselves look at it the same way I do, in the fact that, gosh, when I get inducted in the Hall of Fame, that's it. My career's behind me. And so, and the guys that you mentioned, like Vader's still out there making wrestling appearances from time to time. So some of these guys may not be anxious to do it.
Yeah, we gotta get Vader in. Get Vader in the Hall of Fame.
He'll get in.
Gotta get him in. Well, hopefully we'll see Vader in the Hall of Fame. Speaking of WWE, some WCCW matches that involve you and Kerry Von Erich from '88 are on the network now. They were just added, so people can watch those matches now. Some classic Jerry Lawler. If you know Jerry, I mean, obviously we talked about a lot of Memphis stories, but you have a lot of great matches that aren't on the network or even on YouTube. There's some matches that people haven't posted, but WCCW matches, Kerry Von Erich, you and Kerry going at it, classic match on the network now. So let's search Jerry Lawler on the network, and you have your whole evening is set.
Yes, there you go. And if you're in the Memphis area and you want to have your Saturday evening set, I got to remind everybody that the 11th of November is fast approaching. That's this coming Saturday, and that is going to be the debut of Jerry Lawler's Classic Memphis Wrestling TV show on WLMT Channel 30, 8 o'clock Saturday night. And, this is where we're going to go back and look at some of the old Memphis wrestling matches that were always in the news back in the day. And the way I sort of like to describe the show, Glenn, is I know you saw that old what was it called? Mystery Science Theater or something like that.
Yeah, Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Yeah, where they showed an old movie and these three, I think two of them were robots or something, and then one regular guy, and they would come in and sit down you just see the silhouette of their back, like they were in a movie theater watching the movie, and they would make comments throughout on while you're watching the movie. And so that's sort of what we're doing. That's sort of the idea we had here, in the fact that we go back and we show some old matches. And I have as a guest somebody that was involved in those matches. Like the first guest on the first show is Bill Superstar Dundee, and we picked out 3 matches that Bill and I were involved in, and we stayed down in the little corner of the little box down the corner of the screen, and we're commenting throughout the match. You still hear Lance Russell and Dave Brown and the others announcers doing the commentary on the match, but then Bill and I add comments and sort of behind the scenes stuff, which I think makes it really fun to watch. And we go back and watch some of those old matches. We got the Tupelo concession stand battle on there. We got a match where Bill and I were in a loser leave town match in the 80s, and then another match where me leaving town against Bill Superstar Dundee's wife's hair. If Bill had lost, we were going to shave her head, and if I lost, I had to leave town. So anyway, we go back and look at those 3 matches on this week's show, and it's going to be a cool old Memphis wrestling show.
Looking forward to that, and a lot of people are actually going to be moving to the Memphis area just to watch that show, Jerry.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, right.
You guys can watch, listen to the podcast on YouTube. We're all on the podcast apps. We apologize for not answering any fan questions, even though this is going to be our fan show. So we'll do that next week. So it gives you more time to send your voicemails in. The number is on our social media. You can call in and leave a voicemail for Jerry and I. But for the show, a comment, we'll play it on the air next week. We have a whole bunch of questions from people who emailed or Twitter, tweeted in. So we'll do all those next week as well. And I promise we'll do our Ask King Anything episode next week. But King, any final words before we wrap it up, man?
No, this just kind of flew by, just talking. And, we thank everybody for listening. And I want you to eat that banana pudding that's been sitting there now for all this time.
I'm going to jump into before I have to jump out of here. All right, King. We'll talk to everybody next week here on Dinner with the King.
Bye-bye.
The preceding show is a Pod Avenue production.